Kevin Lemley, criminal defense lawyer here in Central Arkansas. We have offices in Little Rock, Cabot, and Searcy. Talking today about defending a domestic battery case. So a domestic battery, it's a more complicated misdemeanor for us to handle. There's some additional layers of complexity to it that's going to make it tougher than some other misdemeanors. So we'll start off kind of talking about some of the repercussions of it. It has a little bit different effect here in Arkansas if we're found guilty of it or not. So the first things that we go into, if we're found guilty of a domestic battery charge, then it's going to take away your federal gun rights. So it is going to affect your gun rights. That's something that we want to avoid, and we can't just run in and plead guilty to it and expunge it like we can with other misdemeanors. Then also on expungement, for this type of case, the legislature has decided that we can't expunge it for 5 years. So again, typical misdemeanors as a risk management tool, we can go in, plead guilty, turn around and expunge it. We don't have that available for us in a domestic battery case. So we've really got to get focused on how are we going to get this thing dismissed. Now that gets more complicated because the judges and prosecutors, they're being audited by these state agencies, okay? Think of it like the IRS that's looking over your shoulder for your taxes. So they have these state auditors looking over their shoulder, going through these case results, and there's certain things that they're going to get in trouble for and certain things that they're not. One of the ones that they might get in trouble for is how are they handling these domestic battery charges. And so because of that, it's a lot harder to make these go away than it is like a simple marijuana possession or anything like that. Because now we got a prosecutor, he's not going to let it go. He's not just going to dismiss it. He's scared of getting in trouble. And then we have a judge doing the same way, where he's going to be afraid that he's going to get in trouble. So the odds of us just outright getting it dismissed are not great. Now, I have had it happen, but usually we're on a longer track for dismissal that's usually going to take us about 6 months. So a couple of ways that we can look at it. Let me give you the standard fact scenario that we get. It's usually a husband and a wife or some sort of couple. They get in a fight, the cops are called. And up until about 10 years ago, the cops would have been like, hey, y'all get this sorted out. You know, if we got to come back out here, somebody's going to jail. But basically they left it to the whatever was going on with the folks there. Things have changed now. And what we're seeing from these police departments is if they get called out, they're getting a charge to somebody. And so what they'll do, they'll usually pick one of the two and put on the domestic battery charge. Sometimes they'll do both. Usually they'll pick one. Usually it's the man, all right? And then what happens whenever we have that domestic battery arrest, there's an immediate no contact order. And that comes from the legislature, just something that goes into place. So it's usually going to say that whoever's charged with the domestic battery can't have any contact with the alleged victim or their immediate family. So the situation this usually puts folks in, now you've got the guy, he can't have any contact with his wife and his kids, and he can't live in his house. So now he's got to go stay at a friend's place, got to go get a hotel, do whatever. Then the next day or a couple days later, the woman cools off, or whoever the alleged victim is. She calls up the cops, says, all right, I don't want to press charges. I want this lifted. I don't want an NCO. I need help from him with the kids, all this. And here's the hard part. You've completely lost all control of it. They can't just drop the NCO. The only person that has the power to do it is the prosecutor, and they're not going to do it just because the complaining person calls up and says, I want it dropped. So now you get in this very frustrating situation where the person that called the cops on you, they want it dropped. They're trying everything that they can do. They can't make it happen. Now you got this NCO, you got this charge on your record, and you're having to stay at a friend's place or get a hotel or that sort of thing. So Here's the very frustrating part. There's not a standard procedure for how do we lift an NCO, and different prosecutors, different judges have different tactics. So what we have in mind, if you go with us, then we'll show you how we do it. But at that first court appearance, generally speaking, we're going to want to get in front of the judge, have the alleged victim there, explain why we want it dropped. But you have to be ready for the judge to not drop it, even if the victim is jumping up and down that she doesn't want it, all right? Because again, the judge is more concerned about getting in trouble with the auditors than they are about what this is doing to your family. So hopefully we can get that NCO dealt with. Then when we're talking about trial, we have different tactics that we can have in place, and it depends on what evidence is available to us. Because if the officers came in and took pictures, sometimes they can make the case without the witness. Usually they cannot make the case without the witness. And so we can get into a situation where we can get the case dismissed sometimes if the witness is not cooperating. Other times we have to get it on a 6-month plan. It's kind of held sort of like in probation, where we can get it dismissed at the end of 6 months, and then we can go about sealing the arrest record and everything else. Now, if we have to take it to trial, and it's just a straight up his word versus her word, their word against you, then it's a much higher risk trial situation, and it's not one that the prosecution's just going to want to let go. So key to all this, you or a loved one facing a domestic battery charge, best to get someone on early, start working up the evidence, start getting a feel for what's going on with the witnesses, and see what route we can go to get this thing dismissed and get everything cleared and off your record. But domestic battery, a little bit more challenging than your standard misdemeanor. Thanks.